Hi, I'm James Cook, editor of the Electrical Times, which has been bringing you electrifying content since 1892. But here in 2026, we kickstart a new era for the magazine, and what better way than with a podcast? Joining us on the first ever episode of the Electrical Times podcast are our friends at the Electrical Contractors Association, the ECA. We're joined by Managing Director Andrew Eldred and soon-to-be President Glenn Grant. It's a fantastic conversation covering everything ECA from their beginnings in 1901 to right now, 125 years later, comparing what mattered most to electrical contractors back then and how some things are still the same now. It's a great conversation and I really hope you enjoy it. So this morning we're joined by Glenn Grant and Andrew Eldred from the ECA. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I was wondering if you could start by introducing yourselves and providing us with an overview of the ECA.
Good morning, I'm Glenn Grant. I'm the Vice President of the ECA, so I represent one of the member businesses.
And I'm Andrew Eldred. I'm the Managing Director of the ECA, so I'm a staff member. You asked James about the ECA. What are we? Well, Electrical Contractors Association, that's the full name. We're a trade association. We're the second oldest electrical trade association in the world, after the Scots, who got in about 9 months before us. We cover England, Wales and Northern Ireland, not Scotland. We've got a core purpose, which is we help our members build strong businesses and a resilient industry. We do that by offering a range of professional services. So we run guidance, advice, helplines on employee relations, skills, technical, commercial, legal, safety, health and environment. We have products that members can use, digital products, ERAMs, which helps with risk assessments and method statements. We have eComs, which helps members show the competence of their workforce for their certification assessment. And in the last year or so, we've gone into business skills training. So we have a service now called the Growth Hub, which offers a range of business courses for members and their staff. So that's the sort of helping build strong businesses. In terms of influencing, in terms of the industry, we do a lot of policy influencing across a range of areas. And I suspect we'll probably come back to that later.
Brilliant. I wanted to ask, because the ECA was, obviously, as you mentioned, founded 1901, so it's a big anniversary this year, 125 years. Obviously, back in 1901, electricity was a luxury for the few, whereas obviously now it's, to say mainstream would be an understatement. Why did electrical contractors see a need, obviously, to come together at that time in particular? Obviously, you mentioned that the kind of the Scots beat you to it as well, just about. But what, what would the people back then kind of also think about, I guess, the ECA now, and how would they see the industry if they travelled in time to 2026?
Well, going back to 1901, my best guess is the industry was maturing at that point, and the companies felt that they had some shared interests, shared aspirations, and therefore there was a value in coming together. Traveling in time, I guess probably the biggest surprise for them would be just the scale of it all. Obviously, the sources of electricity back then, coal, I would imagine, not much else. Of course, we've moved on a lot since then, and now with renewables. And I think probably the sheer range of applications. We're in the next great wave, aren't we, of electrification, and electrification of heat, electrification of transport, electrification of industry, electrification of everything. So I think that would surprise and probably please them. I think the things that would look very familiar, if you go back into the records, back in the 1900s, surprise, they were complaining about poor payment behaviour from clients. They were complaining about skills shortages, and they were complaining about standards of workmanship, I guess what we would call competence. In terms of looking at the association itself, I think a lot of it they wouldn't recognise. We have modernised. We don't have quite the same type of formal meetings in wood-panelled rooms with gavels and chains of office. We're very digital now, both not just in the product, but in the way we communicate, but always with that core purpose in mind. I guess the comfort they would take is it's still very much a member-owned, member-led organisation, and there are members involved, at every level of the organisation, sort of shaping, directing what we do, all the way to the top. Back in the day, it was Bill Rawlings. He was our first president. Currently, it's Ruth Devine and soon to be Glenn Grant. So I think that bit of it they would certainly be pleased about and find familiar.
Excellent. Obviously, things have evolved as they do, but they'd be happy to see that actually it's still being run as it was intended. Okay, that's great. I mean, a question for you, Glenn. Obviously, you've been kind of in the industry for a number of years now, and obviously involved with the ECA for quite a while. And as Andrew just mentioned, you'll be president in the next few months. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your career history and kind of why ECA membership is important to you and your business.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I've got to start with a confession then that I'm not an electrician. I'm a business owner. I had no dreams to go into the electrical industry. When I needed a job, I went down the job centre and was very lucky enough to fall into an electrical wholesaling management program. So I started off in electrical wholesaling, got some wonderful training there. Did my HNC in business studies, got good product technical training. And then in the mid-1980s, I think it was 1984, went into fire alarms as a specialist part of the electrical industry. And I've stayed in fire alarms since 1984, so I think that's 42 years. It ended up running my own company. And at the moment, I'm running a company called Drax, which is part of the Obsequio Group. So we're a group of compliance-based businesses. So that's me. I've been an ECA member for almost 30 years, I think, with various companies. It's been it's a brilliant organisation. I can't understand why an electrical-based business wouldn't want to be part of the ECA. Yeah, you get the obvious certification services, so your end customers can see there's depth behind what you're trying to do, and somebody else has verified what you're doing is right. Because unfortunately, in the UK, anyone can call themselves an electrician. That's not the same in other countries, but it's certainly the same in the UK. ECA, the member support services are superb. The legal and contracts team has helped me immensely over the years. Employment as well. You get walked all the way through any employment problem. And the technical support, because none of us are experts. And even though some might say I'm an expert in fire alarms, there are times when I've gone to the ECA and got technical advice on fire alarms. The other softer element is business support and networking. So going to ECA meetings, and when you're running your own business, it can be quite lonely if you've got nobody else to go to. So to be able to go to other business owners, share problems, find out we've all got the same problems, and that makes you think, well, yeah, I'm not doing anything wrong, but we still got to find ways around it. That's been really useful. So I've always been quite good at getting to ECA meetings and meeting other members. And then recently the Growth Hub, which ECA launched in terms of bespoke courses specific to our industry. So doing a finance course, not just a general finance course, but one that encompasses industry practices like retentions, like payment applications and certifications. So yeah, it's been a superb association to be a member of.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's always great to have some kind of peer support network, especially as you mentioned. Obviously, if you're running a business yourself, that kind of, I guess, the loneliness aspect, kind of being in it on your own. I mean, to turn to kind of issues that particularly relevant at the moment, I wanted to ask your opinion, Glenn, your take on the impact of the Building Safety Act. Do you and other business leaders kind of speak regularly? Do you regard it mainly as a challenge or as an opportunity?
I think both. it's especially pertinent to myself and my business because we are fire alarm specialists, and a lot of the Building Safety Act is around the fire strategy in a building. Some of it isn't new. Yeah. Whenever there's sadly a huge tragedy with Grenfell, then new legislation, and everyone treats this as a new way of working, but it shouldn't be new. Back in the early 2000s, the standard that we worked to as fire alarm engineers, BS 5839, said involve all interested parties, get everybody involved in the design of all the fire systems. But unfortunately, over the years, is in our industry, people will treat fire as a commodity. So try and buy it as a commodity. Can we place an order based on square footage, or just on the number of components that go in? And that's a challenge, and that industry thinking needs to change, and the Building Safety Act will help change that. But there's been a lot of confusion over the processes, who's responsible for what, the gateway steps now that are in place. There's been big delays on a number of projects because they all then had to go through a new process, and that's caused problems in the industry right the way through the supply chain. There is a tendency for big contractors to push responsibility downwards to the subcontractors without really investigating, do those subcontractors really have the competence to sign off what they're doing? Yeah, because for big contracts, it's a tick box exercise. Yeah. Have they verified design? Yes, this company's verified the design. That's a tick box. But is the company really competent enough? And there is the potential for abuse. So there's a lot more. What is good is there's a lot more design work up front. But of course, specialist contractors are getting pulled into that design work without commitment that they will get the order at the end of it. So we have seen that. My company's seen that. And we are getting involved a lot earlier and putting a lot more effort into the design work, but we're now protecting ourselves against if we don't get the order at the end of the day for the whole project. I think in opportunities wise, definitely it'll improve the design process and make people think a lot more about how the whole fire strategy of a building knits together, the structural integrity, the systems that go in, and not just the fire alarm systems, but the associated systems with it. That will definitely improve. And we're working with a major tier one at the moment on quite a major build in central London. And that's been a very collaborative approach, and that has definitely improved the quality of what the client will see at the end of the day. The other thing is it will force the industry to improve skills, because as I mentioned, anyone can call themselves an electrician, anyone can call themselves a fire alarm engineer. Training has improved. The industry has produced good training now for not just apprentices. A few years ago, an ECA was instrumental in getting the FES Level 3 apprenticeship in place for fire and emergency safety systems technicians. But now there's the experienced worker assessment, which again covers people who've been in the industry a long time, demonstrate the competence, but don't have the qualifications. So there's now a way for them to get qualifications. And, my business, other ECA businesses that are involved in fire and security are making sure, we're taking advantage of that training and certification now. So, challenges, but also opportunities.
Brilliant. And just to move across to you, Andrew, I mean, how is the ECA as a whole sort of engaging with, kind of its members on the Building Safety Act and obviously supporting and representing its members to government?
Yeah, I mean, I think Glenn's covered a lot of it already, but I guess the first thing I'd say is ECA's got a great technical team led by Mike Smith, And their value really kicks in when you start to deal with more complex issues, which is kind of what we're talking about now. We've been supporting members in the way that Glenn's outlined: guidance notes, webinars, regional briefings, workshops. We're also looking to influence. There's been multiple consultations, government consultations about this. The one at the moment is about a single construction regulator, which is an interesting development and potentially an opportunity. But above all, it's really about helping, support the members and the wider industry move towards those sort of higher, more consistent competence standards that Glenn talked about. So in an electrical context, that's done with other people. It's not just ECA, but we're part of it. The electrotechnical assessment specification, which steers the certification bodies towards how they carry out their assessments, that's become a lot more explicit and stronger around competence requirements, not just for qualified supervisors, but for the workforce as a whole. And in just the same way as we've done on the electrical side, on the specialist fire and security side, there's been a lot of work there, some of which Glenn's mentioned. And the Fire and Security Association, which is part of ECA, they've been involved in that very heavily, alongside others like the Fire Industry Association, British Security Industry Association, and so on and so forth. So there are huge implications, both for businesses and for individuals, and for the skills system, both in terms of the initial training, apprenticeships, and also the sort of CPD and upskilling, maintaining your competence, but also upskilling in new areas.
I think that kind of leads sort of onto the next question. Actually, I was going to ask you, Andrew, about the so you talk about the need for a competent workforce. It sort of brings us onto the issue of the skills shortage. And do we have a skills shortage? And if so, how big is it? And what's causing it? And on top of that, kind of how are ECA and other kind of parts of the industry trying to influence things to improve the situation?
Yeah, thanks for that question, James. How long have you got? Is there a skills shortage? Yes, but it varies a lot around the country. How big is it? I can't give you a number, but based on the numbers we've got and the feedback we get, it's big and it's getting bigger. Why have we got a skills shortage? Well, there's the simple answer. There are more people leaving the industry than are entering it. And if you want some numbers on that, JTL, which is the apprenticeship training charity that ECA set up with Unite the Union back in the 1990s, they've done work on this, and they've assessed it as we've lost about 25% of our electricians since COVID. So that's a very significant decline in overall numbers. That's despite apprentices coming in. More people have left than are coming in. If you want to get really down to the reasons for that, why aren't we topping up the numbers in the way that we need to? It's not because there's a lack of people wanting to join. There's no shortage of young people and older people, career changers and so on, wanting to join the industry. The issue we've got as a sector is converting those people into electricians. Now, partly that's about employer demand. Although many employers complain about a lack of skilled people, there are not enough apprenticeship opportunities being offered out there by businesses. Partly it's about the skills system. A lot of the resources and the individuals are being diverted into classroom courses, which don't produce electricians at the end of the day. Last year, 26,000 people started a classroom electrical course. That's compared to just 7,000 starting an apprenticeship. And of those people starting a classroom course, between 10 and 20% maybe will then go on to an apprenticeship, which is obviously the main way for them to actually achieve qualified electrician status. So partly there's a demand issue from employers, partly it's about the skill system diverting people away and the resources being diverted away. Related to that, the apprenticeship system itself is underfunded. And other recognised routes like existing experienced worker assessment get no funding at all. So what we then find for some of our members in some parts of the country, there are actually quite serious gaps in the availability of provision. So Greater London is the obvious one. There just isn't enough provision. But you see pockets elsewhere. The northeast of England, that's a surprise, isn't it? Northeast of England, a lack of apprenticeship provision there. And in really, really growth areas, just up the road from Glenn, in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, there's a real issue there as well. At the same time, as we've got a growing need for these skills from housing, renewables, digital infrastructure, data centres, and so on. So what are we doing about it? Well, I've just mentioned some of the priority policy areas for government. We're talking to the departments that are responsible for those policy areas. So business and trade, housing, communities and local government, energy security and net zero. And over in Wales, talking to the Welsh government as well. We're talking to civil servants. We're also part of broader industry efforts. There's a thing called the Construction Skills Mission Board, which is trying to look at this from a whole sort of industry point of view. And you've got government ministers sitting alongside industry leaders, including one of our members. And what are we saying to them? You know, what do we need to address the issue? Well, fundamentally, you need to address that issue of employer demand and boosting employer demand. And a big part of that is responding to the fact that employment costs for apprentices and others have gone up tremendously. The apprentice minimum wage has doubled since COVID. That's bound to have an effect, particularly for the small businesses. So we need to re-incentivise employers to invest in skills development. As far as the skills system's concerned, we need to focus on routes that lead to skilled employment outcomes, not just paper qualifications. So that's shifting resources away from the classroom courses and towards apprenticeships, towards adult NVQs, towards experienced worker assessment. Those are the sort of the two main things, and members are absolutely at the heart of that. Ruth Devine, our current president, SJD Associates, she's very well known, lobbying all the time within the Department for Education, within the Department for Work and Pensions. Mark Lawrence from Tommy Clark's in London and a lot of other places. He sits on the Construction Skills Mission Board. Jeremy Parkin in Wales, based in Ebbw Vale. He's constantly talking to civil servants and politicians in Welsh Government. And just most recently, and something I haven't mentioned, we're doing a lot of regional work, local work as well, to try and get employers and colleges and independent training providers working together to make the best of the system that we've got. And we have a thing called Training and Careers Alliances, which is what that collaboration is. And we've launched a number of those around the country. And the most recent of those was actually earlier this week in the Thames Valley. And one of our members, Luke Cook from Dark and Taylor in Oxford, he's leading that. So a very active membership, a very active attempt to try and influence the skills system for the better. But we've got a big job on our hands.
Well, it was certainly a lot to digest. And with that in mind, Glenn, how does that sort of ring true with your experience as well as that of, I guess, some of the other ECA members that you may have spoken to?
Oh, definitely. Ever since I've been a member, one of the things has been skills and skill shortages. I mean, it's pleasing what Andrew says, that now, there are people wanting to come in. I would say 20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, construction, the electrical industry was seen as a dirty industry. Any trade was seen as a sort of being second class, and everyone wanted to go to university, or was pushed to go to university. That's changed. It still needs to change more, because and being an electrical engineer or an electrician is not always a dirty job. If you're on a construction site, yes, but I don't know what the percentage of workers on construction sites compared to working buildings is, but all of our engineers don't work on construction sites. They work in hospitals, universities, offices, campus style arrangements, and they earn good money. Now, it's not a poor industry at all. I've got engineers earning £60,000 to £70,000 a year quite happily. So it's a great industry to be part of. The FES level 3 was a big improvement for the fire alarm industry and the security industry. But every ECA member that I talk to, whether it's in my own region, whether it's across the country, skills comes up. But most ECA members are very focused on, it might be costing a lot more. As Andrew said, it's now costing double what it costs to have an apprentice, but you still got to do it. So the group of companies that I'm part of, Obsequio Group, we've produced our own academy now. So we've got our own core cohort of engineers, apprentice engineers going through, because you've just got to do it. You've got to suffer the pain, do it, grow your own people, and grow them in your own culture. So it's a long-term strategy, but definitely we've got to keep doing it. And ECA, spends a lot of time. Andrew's mentioned Ruth Devine, our current president. She's got a huge commitment to skills and improving that. So we've got to do more of that.
Brilliant. And just kind of flip it around, Glenn. Obviously, talk about payments and retentions. Obviously, bad commercial practices and behaviours are obviously another feature of the industry that the ECA and others often say are holding the industry back. Mm-hmm. What's been your experience on the impact of retentions, late payments and other bad business practices, and what reforms do you and other ECA members want to see?
We want it's a difficult one, because I don't believe there are companies out there that actively go out of their way. There may be, but I'm not aware of them. But certainly, we see retentions applied. We see them applied stupidly. So just the other day, we got where the incumbent on a large site, we got an order from a contractor. It was £5,000 worth of work, and they wanted to apply 5% retention. And I was going, have you worked out what 5% of £5,000 is? And are you really sure you want to be? If you want to do it, then we're not interested. So, but being an ECA member and having the contractual support has given me the confidence to be able to approach things like that. So we've also seen retentions applied by our customers, which may be a builder or a major contractor, when they're not having retentions applied to them. We especially see that when we're the incumbent on a site. We've worked direct for the customer. The customer's then chosen to place the maintenance work through maybe an FM provider. And suddenly we find, whereas we were getting paid in 7 days, especially on a public contract, now we're getting told you're going to get paid in 90 days. Yeah. So these practices do go on. We're strong enough and confident enough that we fight back. And one of my aims as president is to make sure we develop the services of the Growth Hub, so we make our members stronger to challenge these payment practices. We also, unfortunately, with public bodies, is payment can be very slow. It's not a case of they don't have the money. It's a case of their own processes in terms of processing our invoice, getting it matched up, getting a payment run done. Sometimes that can be very protracted through nobody's fault, just the fault of the process, and that needs to improve. ECA can help. But it is an industry-wide problem, and I'm sure it's not just in the electrical industry. If we talk to our colleagues in BESA, the Building Engineering Services Association, they'll say the same for the mechanical industry as well. It's got to improve. It has improved, but there's more to be done. One of the ways I think ECA can help is skilling up its members so they can argue more confidently about this and improve payment and retention practices.
Brilliant. And Andrew, obviously the ECA has been at the forefront of pressing for the sort of reforms that Glenn's talked about there. What progress are you seeing, and how hopeful are you for the future?
Yeah, I mean, this has been going on for decades, probably all the way back to 1901 in one form or another. Yeah, it can be a long, slow and frustrating process sometimes, and particularly in recent years, it hasn't helped by the regular churn of construction ministers. You get to a point where you think you've persuaded somebody of something, and then they move on to another department and you start all over again. But things are looking up. Steve Bratt, our Group Chief Executive, and Rob Driscoll, our Director of Legal, have really been at the forefront of arguing within the Construction Leadership Council, within the Department of Business and Trade, for that, supported by members like Glenn, who've been able to sort of explain the impact that all of this has on their business. We have over recent years, particularly, seen more scrutiny of main contractors' performance, payment performance, particularly on public sector work. So that's been a win. And of course, last year we had the government consultation on payment and retentions, and that was a very positive move, very hopeful, very helpful. We're still waiting for the formal response to that. So I can't predict success, but what I can say is I think we're closer to success than we have been for a long time.
Brilliant. Well, I can't think of a better note to end on than that, the positivity at the end. Just to kind of close us out, I wanted to thank you both for joining us, and also just to ask for anybody listening or watching who wants to find out more, how can they get involved with the ECA?
Well, give us a ring. And all the details are on the ECA website, which is www.eca.co.uk. I mean, if you want to find out about how we help support businesses, there's a section there called Member Support. In terms of if you're interested in the influencing side of things, then it's taking action. If you're interested in our 125-year history and what we're doing this year, that's in news and events. So that's the website, but you can follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on YouTube at ECA Live. There's some great content there. There's some better content behind the paywall for members only, but there's still some good content there for everybody.
Fantastic. Well, we'll include some links in the episode description as well, so everybody watching and listening can find those by scrolling down. But no, thank you once again for joining us. Really appreciated your time.
Thank you very much.